Julian Winkelmann, and my topic is segmentation, targeting, positioning, as well as customer heterogeneity, which is part of tutorial 2. And I will also focus on the third tutorial. My tutorial group number is 1, and my tutor was Lara. So the company that I chose as a business case is called Green Fusion. And what they do is basically, when you have a heating system in a house, you need a central control unit for it nowadays. And this control unit needs a software, and Green Fusion is the software. So if you have solar panels, heat pumps, and batteries maybe, and the standard heating systems, Green Fusion helps to integrate all this using AI and the so-called sector connectivity between, for example, photovoltaic, which is electricity, and your heat pumps, which are heat. And this is pretty revolutionary because the existing ones are often not interconnecting with the different systems, and they're all running on themselves very inefficiently. And Green Fusion helps to increase this efficiency by 20 to 30%, and therefore reduces your heating costs by the same amount, and also decreases emissions because of that. Speaking about emissions, it's a core value of the company. I think it's important to mention because it's part of the value proposition of by them, is that they want to reduce emissions where it really matters. And they say this because 17.5% of global emissions are due to energy use in buildings. And comparing this to transportation, which is roughly 16%, really becomes evident why it's really important to focus on this. And also it's not nearly as much press as, for example, airlines polluting the environment. And I'm going to be explaining my framework from the left to the right, slowly, moving from one point of the literature to another, and also making the strategy at the same time. So I'm going to be starting off with the customer heterogeneity, which has 4 different subcategories in this case. I know it has more if you have normal customers, but the special thing about Green Fusion in this case is that they are a B2B company. They don't sell to end consumers, and therefore their customers are companies and don't have some of the same characteristics that end consumers have. But these companies still have very different needs. They have very different functional needs. So a hospital might buy a different software solution than a factory owner, and he might buy a different solution compared to a residential building. And even though these are businesses, there's still self-identification, especially among the larger businesses, that they identify as modern, as forward-looking, as responsible, and part of this is reducing emissions, and for some companies also reducing costs for their shareholders. The marketing part I'm going to be getting back to later on. I'm going to be focusing on the segmentation first. So the market of Green Fusion is huge because it's literally every house that's heated. You have commercial houses, and you have residential houses, and you could say functional houses, which are in between, like hospitals. And the focus of Green Fusion should be on large real estate firms, so that's their targeting solution, for a number of different reasons. So basically, private real estate owners tend to have a house that's rather small and has a very simple heating system, so there's not a lot of room for huge efficiency gains and therefore big cost reductions, which would justify a larger price for the software, because there is an implementation cost for Green Fusion for every project. Hospitals, for example, would also not be a great fit for the company because they require huge security and often don't even want a software and rather have a rather inefficient system costing more money, but really, really high security for them. So they are also not a fit. Therefore, the large real estate firms such as Vonovia or Deutsche Wohnen would be ideal target customers. They have the capital, the expertise, and the incentives to implement a system like this. So the positioning of the company, which is the step after targeting, can be made up by different subcategories, you could say. So one of them is the value proposition, which the HBR article proves is really important because it helps the team as well as your customers identify with the company, going back to self-identification of the customer heterogeneity. And part of the value proposition is also the power of purpose, which is part of the case study regarding Lime. And for Lime, it has been proven essential for the firm that they offer their clients CO2-free travel and really also translate this in their marketing and also for their employees as a value proposition and everybody they're dealing with. Another really important aspect of positioning are psychographics. Psychographics are rather difficult to define for a company such as Green Fusion because your customers are businesses and therefore they don't really have psychographics, but at the same time they do because they're people making the decisions of purchasing the software that you're marketing to. So one of the principles that's important to keep in mind for Green Fusion especially is that even though they're dealing with businesses, their customers constantly change, maybe even more than normal consumers, because in the software market, a company like Vonovia, for example, large residential company, they own 400,000 flats. They're going to have a lot of different software solutions, and those are changing constantly. So you need to be able to integrate with all of them. Therefore, you need customer-centric marketing, focusing on the customer's needs and then also meeting these needs and maybe changing your own business model or marketing models in order to do so. So one of the parts that I mentioned was to integrate with established software. This should also be part of the marketing plan because if you are integrated in a system such as SAP or you're only compatible with it, it's a huge competitive advantage, but at the same time it's a big selling point and also gives you a lot of attention. Another aspect of the positioning is the pricing model that they chose, which is software as a service. This has some benefits and some drawbacks, and I'm going to be speaking about them in a second when I have this point up on the PowerPoint, which is that subsidies make up a huge part of what companies pay for the software. Therefore, for some companies, it's more worth it to pay a lump sum in the beginning. So, for example, they pay the first 5-6 years of the service in the beginning. This is really great for Green Fusion at the same time because they have a lot of capital to work with quickly, and they are adaptive in this pricing strategy in order to meet their clients' needs for that, because the clients can save up to 40% if they pay in a lump sum. They basically get the money back from the government. And last but not least, certainly, is promotion. I think for Green Fusion, personal connection is integral. So you try to build connections in the network on LinkedIn. You go to expos such as the Expo Real in Munich, where all the big real estate firms for your market, for example, Germany, are. And you try to communicate with these people and build personal relationships because you're selling a product that's not a one-time thing. You're going to have a long-lasting relationship with your clients, and it's also really expensive if you have a client that has a few 100,000 residential units. Email is an integral part of this because email is just very dominant in business. And this is it for my presentation about this. This is a quick overview of everything together. And if you have any questions, just like email me or something, any interest. And my references are given here. So I used chapter 2 mainly. I used the 2 articles of the second tutorial and also parts of the 3rd chapter in the book. Thank you very much for listening.